What's up? I am a Mexican skateboarder, and I'm here to make some commentary on the role of Mexican skateboarders and their complicit participation in racial structures that enforce mainstream pool skating, transition skating in general, to be sequestered almost exclusively for whites and for the chosen Mexicans and other Latinos that make their way into the ranks. Um, I'm gonna just get right into it because nobody's really interested in an intro. Um, I grew up in San Diego, California. I grew up skating at Washington Street, the world famous DIY, one of the four main DIYs known across the United States. That would be FDR in Philly, Burnside in Portland, um, Washington Street in San Diego, and I guess you could probably say like Lower Bob's in Oakland, although I'm sure some East Coasters will tell me I'm missing a couple critical ones. But regardless, um, pool skating, specifically in places like that where it's considered almost like a religion. Um, if you've experienced it, then you know. And if you haven't, just imagine the most rabid sports fans and then make them even more bitter and angry because they feel rejected, and you'll have an idea of how intense the environment can be. Um, I think that it's one of the last parts of skateboarding that still has a great deal of hazing in it. And that also kind of plays into part due to the structures that this system within that subculture uphold. And so, taking a look back, right, when you imagine pool skating, right, you imagine sort of like a punk sort of, fuck everything attitude, which for a long time been only allowed for white people to have. If other races have a fuck you attitude, then they're aggressive, they're violent, they're looking for problems, they want to cause issues. If a white guy does it, then he's being rebellious, he's fighting against the powers that be. Don't keep me down, man. I'm whatever. It's a descendant of the hippie, even though they would hate to hear that. But there's a lot of things within that culture that appreciates sort of rugged individuality, and sort of a lot of ideals that are tied into like old American concepts, like figuring it out on your own and asking no one for help and barging through and manhandling stuff, because of the nature of what pool skating is. You hop a fence, you have to break into a house in order to skate a pool unless it's a permission pool. But if you're skating a permission pool, then nobody cares about your clips, nobody cares about your footy because it doesn't count. It's not like what a pool skating is supposed to be about. Or at least that's how I was raised in that school of thought. It could be that people nowadays don't even uphold that, but that's neither here nor there. I'm trying to illustrate an understanding of what it was and what I knew it to be, and what I'm able to notice having grown up there. Now, when you go to these pools and you go to these environments, you're going to mostly see white people. But the only other people that you're going to see besides them are going to be Latino. I would bet you most money in my pocket, which isn't a lot, that you're not going to see a crew of white punks cruising around with a black guy. They're just not going to do it. And they probably would tell you that they would, but they won't. And so would doesn't mean shit when you won't actually do it. And more than that, it's more of a question of how can that not happen? Because if you skate street, like I have for the last 5 or 6, 7, almost 10 years actually, then it's unavoidable. You can't not be around black people because black people love skating. But why is it that black people have been almost sequestered into just street skating? I don't think it's as simple as area-specific geography. I don't think it's as simple as socioeconomic status that predicts what sort of resources people have in certain houses and neighborhoods, and whether or not certain individuals are able to be in neighborhoods where there are lots of pools. That's a whole other question. I'm talking directly about the conscious or subconscious actions that white pool skaters have taken in order to perpetuate this. And you can look down to it even in the small details, right? Like what sort of ways does Latino culture sort of conveniently fit into white skater punk culture? Well, you can even see it in how they dress. They'll dress with the high white socks, which is traditionally known as being correlated to a cholo, right? They'll dress with the cutoff dickies, right? or with the baggy dickies, which is again traditionally related to the cholo. You know, they'll wear a tank top, right, with their shirt. You know, probably wear some wraparound shades like the lokes, you know, the rectangular ones that also associated with Latino culture, right? So specifically Mexican culture or Chicano culture, however you want to look at it. Don't even get me started on Chicano culture. That shit, fuck that. But regardless, it exists. And so it makes sense almost from, if we want to look at it sort of shallowly, from a fashion perspective, that, you know, Mexicans, Latin Americans would sort of be more accepted by these white folks because obviously we know that Mexicans did it first, but or Latin Americans did it first, but white people have been doing it for a long time. So they also love that shit. They love those, you know, the skinhead look, the white socks, all that shit. It just looks different on a white guy versus on a Mexican guy. But so there's that. There's sort of the physical outlook, the way that people express themselves. Is it's difficult to say congruent because of the appropriative nature, but what we'll say is that they can coexist, right? And so then you think a little bit about more than just the dress. You think about the attitude, right? So historically speaking, I'll speak about Mexicans. I'm Mexican, so I'll speak about Mexicans. Mexicans are extremely colorist, extremely racist. It's a historical part of our culture. It's something that we have a lot of work to do to unlearn. You know, whether it be moms, you know, saying to marry light skin to better the race. All these sort of conversations are had in Latin American households and specifically in Mexican households. You know, harmful words and slurs are still used pretty frequently against black people. People are still referred to by their skin color, by their skin tone. You know, you might call me blanquito, but then you might call someone else moreno, which, you know, although it's hidden behind a veneer of harmlessness, of culture, of tradition, of all these things, it still is a stratification of an individual. It still is a constant messaging sent to everybody that we are perceiving you as this thing, you are in this box. So I digress. Why does that connect to white pool skaters? Well, because the fact is, a lot of times the Mexicans will support them in their racist perception of others. And so why would that be? Why would a Mexican ascribe to racist ideals just because somebody else was saying it in front of them? Well, it's something that we see a lot with this sort of model minority concept. You can research that yourself, but it's an idea. It was originally, I think, introduced sort of discussing Asian Americans and sort of like the role that they have been placed and sequestered under, which is almost like a sort of perverted idealization of them while still creating them to be subhuman. It's almost like they're aliens rather than, no pun intended, but it's almost like they're super terrestrial, like put on this pedestal of like, oh, they're uber smart, but also therefore by doing that, it dehumanizes them and makes them sort of like beyond support. So we see like super high suicide rates, super high mental health issues in a lot of Asian American students that feel unable to live up to the hype or to the expectation of the racial stratification of their identity. So, you know, a lot of people assume, oh, you're Asian, you should be good at math. And so that puts this massive pressure on people because not everyone is going to be doing that, because not everyone is a monolith, because no race has one singular skill. And that's all products of capitalism and of racism and all the Western powers to try to put people in boxes, to minimize them, for they themselves to look at themselves as less than, to not dare to believe that they could be holistic beings beyond that. So that's part of the stratification. And they were sort of put in this place as, you are the model minority, therefore, like, you are closer to whiteness. You are closer to the resources. You're closer to the benefits. So a lot of Asian people subsequently, especially in the United States, have, I can't speak to the history of how they are in their countries of origin, but a lot of Asian people perpetuate a lot of racist treatment of Latinos, Mexicans, but primarily, even more so, black people. So how does that correlate? Why is that related to what Latinos are doing? Well, I believe that within the skateboarding pool, you know, punk pool culture scene, I believe that Latinos are sort of the model minority to those individuals. Why? Well, the generalization of Latinos: hardworking, family-oriented, conservative, right? So that's a key point, right? Conservative. A lot of Latinos are very homophobic, right? So how does that fall into that? Well, people that are racist, people that are white punks, they're also going to be homophobic. So they need to be around somebody that can be explicitly homophobic, explicitly supporting them in those statements. But most importantly, they need somebody that wants to be a part of them. So again, model minority only works because people want the resources that white people have, the connections they have. In this case, it's not so much about resource, but rather acceptance. When you look at skateboarding, when you look at old pool skateboarding, all of it was done by white guys, right? So if you're a growing up Latino kid like myself, the only person that I wanted approval from once I started skating in the pool scene was other white guys. You know, I wanted them to all think I was cool. I wanted them to fuck with me. So it's the same thing that's happening with, you know, Latin Americans. They want to be accepted. So that's the reward. So what's the price? The price is participating in racist conversation, letting the joke go on, letting them call you a beaner, letting them say whatever, and on top of that, participating with them when they go and racially stratify black people. I spent a lot of time on Washington Street growing up. You know, I wouldn't name names, but a lot of dudes used the N-word when they thought it was funny, and I was too young to like really understand. And then once I got older to be like, oh, that's fucked up, like 16, 17, then, you know, now I'm the one ostracized. Oh, Mr. fucking thinks he's holier than thou, Mr. whatever, Mr. woke, whatever, whatever. You know, I was always reading, so it was like, oh, college boy, you know, calling me that for just like, you know, trying to bring up some decent respect and care for others. So they need people, they being the powers that be, the rhinos of the world, the Peter Hewitts of the world. But I'm not putting that on Peter Hewitt because he's chill. But I'm saying like guys that ride the coattails of what those guys did, but then add the racist flair. You know, those guys need little lackeys and little you know, Mexican kids like me running around, going and buying their cigarettes for them at the store and doing whatever, and letting them get away with saying all sorts of crazy stuff. What they get in exchange is a feeling of closeness to a exotic or exciting or different culture. They feel that they can make certain jokes. And when you look at like pool skating in general, it's really leaned in to like the Latin American imagery. Like, you know, there's always a carne asada grill out. They're all wearing the tanks. They all got the shirts and the hats, and everyone's got their khakis and their shit. And it's all a costume. It's all a fit. And when you sprinkle in some Latinos in there, then you get that flavor. And what really made me think about this in the first place was looking at the old interview with Jeff Grosso and Robbie Russo. And it was like, it's called The Conversation. And rest in peace, Jeff Grosso. I don't think he's one of those racist guys necessarily, but I don't know. He could have been. So fucking who knows? He listened to a bunch of that Nazi punk bullshit. But I could tell in the conversation and in the moments where it's like, there were times where like Robbie would try to like say something and Jeff would receive it like whoa, like, oh, like, you know, you're some kind of like exciting, interesting, mildly scary other species. And then Rob, like, cows, you know, bends over, averts his eyes to the big, oh my God, Jeff Grosso, the GOAT, I must avert my eyes to you. And, you know, sort of like mumbles some story about his grandmother for the entertainment of Grosso to see, like, yeah, see, that's a real ass kid. That's a real ass kid going through real ass shit. So what? So they, the power that be with the privilege and the reputation and the connections and the resources, can feel closer to struggle, which makes them feel cooler, and closer to their punk ideals, which they claim to uphold. But they don't, right? And it's all a performance. It's all fugazi. It's all it's all spectator or designed for spectators. It's a big old spectacle. But in terms of like things that are traditionally associated to black culture, those places, those things, those ideas, those aren't like welcome in the pool space. They want a guy that's down to go along with all that shit. And I think most black people are not going to go for as much racist shit as a Mexican person will let be said. Because the totem pole exists, right? So if the Asians are the model minority, Mexicans are worse off than them. Latinos are worse off than them. But they're certainly better off than African Americans and black people. And, you know, we can run numbers, we can run statistics, but if you're watching this right now, you know in your heart and your mind that that's true. Like, the way that racial stratification exists. Now, this is a really sensitive thing to say right now because we have the ICE stuff going on. It's been going on. We got, President Obama deported more people than any president ever. And now we got Trump, like, on an actual, Hitler-like crusade about it. Continuing the work, you might say, that our boy started, but that's another conversation. So right now it is really a bad time to be Latino. And there is a great deal of oppression in that sense. I think that that's mostly sequestered towards individuals that are recent immigrants. But we have a massive population in the United States of second gen, first gen, third gen, all sorts of generations of people that grew up here while being brown, while being ethnically Latin American. And when you look at all those different generations of people that have been inundated and what you call acculturated by the Western culture, which means becoming adapted to, sort of melding and ascribing to the ideals. I mean, when you look at the Latinos, man, I mean, Latinos were a big reason for the vote for Trump, right? Like, how many Latinos for Trump signs did you see? How many times have I seen? I work at a place where we fight for people with no papers. I won't even say where because who knows if this video, something. But I fight against ICE. I fight against those people. I've stood toe to toe with my people and made sure that, people get home safe. And so when I look in their eyes and I see that they're Latinos a lot of times the people working for the Border Patrol are the people, the same culture that they're trying to abuse. And so why is that? It's the same thing as the skating. Why do they let them say racist stuff? It's because people want acceptance, people want power, people want to be safe. And, once you become in this country for a little while, it seems a little bit pointless and futile to hold on to your old cultural identity. It seems a lot safer, smarter, and productive to go full hog straight into whatever racist, xenophobic, homophobic, or other sort of nationalist concept is being put forward by your fellow American countrymen, and basically fall in line. If they don't see me, if you can't beat them, join them kind of energy. And so, skating, that also is something that you can see in the way that, the fear that a kid looks, not the fear, but like the avoidance at which you'll notice and see Mexicans sort of allow their pool buddy to say all this crazy shit and sort of stand behind it because, well, I want to be a part of this punk shit. I want to be on Anti-Hero, Robbie Russo. I want to be on Anti-Hero. I want to skate with the Eagle. I want to be 1-8. Because it seems cool, man, because that's who did it. I get it, man. I fucking love those videos. They're great. But we can't keep letting motherfuckers like, what's his name? Tony Marana be on the same team as people from our race. Like how the fuck, and if you don't know who that is, Tony Mariana, or I forget how you say his last name, but he's Timo. He's the guy that was on Anti-Hero since the early 2000s, part in the Cash Money Vagrant video, part in a bunch of trips and shit. And a lot of you might not know this, but that fool is fucking racist as shit. Like everyone in the Bay Area knows that. He doesn't really come around like that, probably because of that. I don't really know, but there's hella videos and footage and stories I've heard of him calling people the N-word, hard R, and then running and hiding behind his little Mexican buddies mixed in with all the white guys. And, I'm not racist, I got Mexican friends, or I'm just joking, you can't take a joke. Why can he take the joke, but you can't? Weaponizing, the connection that he has to Latino skaters, right? And I'm fucking, even Jake Phelps, right? Great example. That fool used to literally drop the N-word more than anybody on earth, bro. And he did it hiding behind his army of tiny Mexican kids. Again, if you're not in San Francisco, I don't expect you to know. But I live in the Mission District. I live 10 blocks from Potrero. And mostly what you're going to find in the Mission District is a bunch of Latino kids, right? And they're all fucked up and they're poor and they need money. So what does Jake Phelps do? He gives them boards. He gives them shoes. He gives them stuff. He makes them feel like they're a part of his little fake crew, even though he needs them to give him validation, to make him feel like he has street cred. The same reason that fool, what's that fucking guy's name here in town? He's like some skate dude out here, and he skates Potrero. another dude that yells the N-word all the time, screams it when he's drunk. That shit's not cool, man, and it's just fried. And it's our job, and I'll say it's my job as like a Mexican skater, especially as like a white Mexican skater, to be like, yo, this shit is fucked up. And we're not rolling with this like bullshit, like walking on eggshells, like being afraid to talk about it. Like, nah, bro, fuck that shit. That shit is lame. Everybody knows that punks be racist. Everybody knows that punks be Nazis and shit. So then why are we like acting surprised when someone's like, yo, have you noticed like the pool skate scene that's based in punk rock is kind of racist? It's like, yeah, it fucking is. And that shit's a travesty because pool skating is fun as fuck. And I got privileged enough to grow up skating pools and skating Washington Street too. And having all that sessions like really made me realize how awesome it is. And then when I moved to the Bay Area and everybody was skating street, I joined. Now I'm into street, but a lot of times I'll be like, oh, let's skate this or that out of town, or bring up a certain style of skating, and fools will be like, nah, bro, I can't go to that place. Those fools don't fuck with black people. And it's like, damn, like, it's that over the top, it's that overt, or even it's like worse, where it's like fools don't even consider the possibility. So, yeah, just a little video analysis on that. And yeah, I think it's a phenomenon that indicates and reveals a lot. And I think there's plenty more I didn't really say about this, and I didn't flesh out all these ideas. This is all just me spieling as usual. But yeah, just something to think about. And I hope that we can be better as a community to call out bullshit and make it a space where everyone can rock out and enjoy this thing that we love, because it's so damn fun, man.